Okay, and welcome to this quick little guidance video for your pre-release material for Unit 22 Investigating Business. What we're going to look at, hopefully, is some of the themes of what the paper might be and basically giving you some simple guidelines about what notes may be really useful. Well, you're going to have access to this paper and you've probably seen it already, but I want to highlight a few things that you are going to need to do. So really briefly, make sure that you are aware that you are only allowed to do 4 sides of A4 notes. You've also got 6 hours to do this. Now we're splitting this up into 3 sessions of 2 hours. And just look at the detail around there about the minimum 11 size font, and that it's in unsupervised conditions, and that you've got to hand it in at the end of the supervised sessions with your BTEC sport teachers. However, I suppose the real thing that we need to look at is this. This information is the key bit. So in preparation for part B, you'll research personal training businesses that focus on health and fitness. Now that sounds really basic and really obvious, but the key things here are, that personal training business and health and fitness, just there. There we go. Now, the 4 things that it's asking you to research is business operations, the facilities, products and services, and demographics. So I'd be inclined to look at 3 different styles or types of business. Okay, remember, all of them must relate back to this personal training. But think of those 3 different ones. Now, if we're thinking about those 3 different ones, what is that actually going to look like? Well, what do we actually know? Well, really simply, we know that we're going to get 4 different tasks in the paper. So we're going to have to review the business information. We're going to have to do a business model analysis, the recommendations of what we do to improve the business, and then justification of that. Now that justification is one of the most common mistakes. We very often see that people put their recommendation and their justification all into number 3 and then repeat what they're talking about just here. Okay, don't fall into that trap. Make sure that you keep it very clear, recommendations, and then in task 4, keep it as that simple justification of why you've made those recommendations. Again, we're going to touch on that in a minute. So, again, let's have a little think. Things I want you to think about and highlight. Remember, task 1, 16 marks. Task 2, 16. The big one, I suppose, task 3, 20 marks. And then the final one, 12. So think about that in the amount that you're writing and you're linking and your writing structures. How are you looking at what you're writing is actually answering the question of reviewing the business information? Now this information here is coming up really nice and simply from a exam review. It's talking about what you need to do. So this is what the examiners are actually looking for when they're marking your papers. Bear that in mind. Remember, we're always going to be in a better position if we know what we're actually going to be asked to do. So this is what those examiners will be marking your stuff on. Take a moment, pause the video and have a little read of this information. So starting off with task 1. Remember, we're looking at doing a review of the information that you're going to get in part B. Now, we don't know what that is, but if we're thinking about the personal trader, it could be one of 3 things. So it could be a sole trader. Now, what is that? So make sure in your notes you're starting to write down what these 3 areas are, what the sole trader is, what an LTD and a public limited company might be. So a sole trader is basically going to be an independent one person who might have set up their own business as a personal trainer. Research this. Okay, so research one-man bands. Okay. Now they could be anything from a person's name. You may look at this on Google. You may even choose to look at some sort of social media and look at personal trainers. So think Twitter, think Instagram. I know it's a bit unorthodox, but you will get an idea and a basic premise of what a sole trader does and how they operate their business. Remember, you want to make sure that you give a definition for all of these. Okay, it might not just be that it's a sole trader, but for the private limited companies, the public limited companies. Okay, so think about that. A private limited company maybe employs more than one one personal trainer, but obviously hasn't got a huge investment in it. So it may be one standalone gym who hires all these people. So, quick little bit of rooting around for myself. Look at somewhere like H2 Fitness in Nottingham. Okay, you can find some information about them and what they do, how they develop their personal training schemes, what they actually do. Remember, you're going to be given information on the day in Part B about a personal training company and the business about health and fitness. So make sure you're really explicit that you review that business. This is background, giving you notes and information what you do. The final area, look in here, is going to be this public limited company or a PLC, which it could be something like Virgin Active, David Lloyd, that has a far bigger scope. Apologies for the unneat writing here. But it has a far bigger scope and therefore maybe that bigger scale that we think about when we think of gyms and personal training in the future. Now again, still for task 1, we're going to be thinking of all these things. The type of business it is. Okay, what type of business is it? What's the scope and size? How big is it? Micro? Small? Medium? Or large? And those are going to be really important because obviously that will give some context to the business that is going to be reviewed in Part B. Now the type of business that we're going to be looking at will also have a direct link to the aims and objectives. Now I would be very surprised with a personal training basis and idea that that's what's being promoted and what the questions are going to be about, whether the type of business wouldn't just be a private business. I'd be very surprised to see if it was going to be something of a public sector or voluntary sector, because obviously of the type of business that it is, lending itself very naturally to a private. So think about all those things and think about what it might be. Therefore, the aim and objective becomes important. Think about what it might be. It could be something as simple as making profit, but obviously with it being in the health and leisure industry, it could be that it's there to be a leading market, okay, providing a service. Okay, so a market leader or service, okay, because obviously people go to put personal trainers to actually get some more ideas and more improve their health and their fitness, and it could be body image or whatever it might be. So all those things should be taken into consideration. Look at what the task B information tells you. Has it give you any clues about what the purpose might be? Then again, look at this idea of the provision and purpose. What might it be? And finally, I know I've just skirted on that, but think about that. Look at that up in your notes. And then finally, demographic. Personal trainers don't tend to be free. They tend to be because they charge a fee to the customer. So what demographic, if you think about it logically, if you're in a poor socio-economic area, okay, the likelihood of you having a high level of income from the private sector may be reduced. However, if you are in a high socio-economic, you probably got a lot more people. Start again there, can't spell. Okay, in a high socio-economic area, you're going to find more customers there. So if you think about the location in the country, if you're in London where there's a high disposable income, supposedly, there may be more opportunities for personal trainers. So, SWOT. Task 2. This is going to be looking to ask you about your business model. Now, and that business model analysis, you've got two choices. You've got that choice of the SWOT analysis over here, or the pestle. Now, hopefully you know and are familiar with both of these, but just for clarification, okay, you need to make sure that you know what these are. This is information that should go into your notes. I would personally favour the SWOT analysis. It says either SWOT or pestle. Be very clear that you only do one. You don't need to do one for both of them. Make sure you read that question, okay? A big chunk of people have made that mistake in the past where they've tried to do a business model analysis for both models, okay? It asks you to choose one or the other. So make sure you are familiar with one. Like I say, I would personally look at the SWOT, okay? Again, remember, you're taking your information from part B. We don't really know what it's going to be, but if we know if it's a sole trader, if we know if it's a PLC or an LTD, that they will have different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats that may well influence your decisions. Now, if you look at your revision guide that you've been given and that you've looked at, it actually gives you on page 51 an example of a personal trainer who actually has a SWOT analysis done. So gain some ideas from that. What are the things that you need to do? Remember, it's worth 16 marks. You need to make sure that you have a clear understanding of each one and then apply it to your information that you are given in part B. Right, task 3. Now, I suppose this is the big one. It's 20 marks. It's your recommendations about what you would do in order to improve this business. Now, think of everything that you've done. Now, we're trying to think about it being your business. What would you do to make improvements? So, think about these areas. Can the types of jobs that are available to the company really make a difference? So, by having a manager or a volunteer, is that going to help move and steer that business forward? What sorts of facilities are available? So that idea of facilities, do they need to have some feedback from customers about what it is that is going right or wrong? Have they got high quality facilities? If you think about it logically, if you were to see the equipment at Virgin or even someone like the David Ross Centre at Nottingham Uni, okay, is that something that would entice you to be able to have personal training in the future? Are the resources that you have at your disposal something that would encourage you to have something and maybe as a customer take up the opportunity of having personal training? These are things that maybe moving into the recommendations area that they may want to invest in the future. Now, in terms of the resource management, this upskilling, okay, could be a huge part. Have the person got the necessary skills, okay, the knowledge that you need to actually have a high-level product that you can sell out there? What about the productivity that is actually going on in terms of people designating their time? Has the company invested in that productivity properly? Okay, so look at the detail. This is where your notes will come in useful, but also the detail that comes into part B on the day will inform some of these things. Now, marketing, pretty simple. Okay, the 7 Ps. Think about those 7 Ps. How will that help your business grow? Put yourself in the shoes of the person who is trying to make those recommendations and make and grow that business. Think about identifying the 7 Ps. Remember, we want you to identify and explain. So you're going to have to give some definitions. You're going to have to expand on some of those theories, those ideas that we've talked about in lessons. And then finally, customer service and communication. Most businesses will use their customer base to inform decisions. So really important that you get an idea about what that might look like. In your recommendations, what are you talking about? Why have you done that? What is the purpose? Could be quite a simple one, but hopefully will be one that will see the most benefit in terms of moving forward and creating a different set of results. Now, task 4, 12 marks. We've got to look at the why really. It's this idea of justifying what you've talked about in task 3. Remember, as I said earlier on in the video, don't get mixed up with putting everything into one question, because you won't have anything to talk about and you just have repetition, which is not what we're looking for. The justification looks at 3 simple things. Why have you made decisions or made the recommendations you have? Can you then evaluate how effective those decisions will be? You may need to use some sort of thing about market forces or some finances, or even looking at something as simple as trends, which would obviously be a benefit for you to research and add to your notes. But then it's also looking at that analysis idea. Okay, so why evaluate analysis? Okay, how is your analysis? How have you come to these decisions? What is it? So this is where you need to back it up from your notes and your previous research and what you've talked about previously. This is why the note-taking section is really important. Think about that in terms of when you're doing this over the next 6 hours, how it's going to be beneficial. What little sections can you do? Find out as much information as you can. Once you've done it once, go over it again. Find another little bit of information that you might not have covered before. The summary of this is pretty simple, really. In here, this is what you need to write for each section. Review of business, the type, the scope, the aims, provision, demographic, laws and legislations. For the business model analysis, the SWOT, job roles, personal spec, types of employment, and then recommendation, HR, physical. You can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, it's all pretty self-explanatory. The final thing I want you to think about is I did a really quick search, and like I say, it's going to be dependent. So look at maybe those 3 categories of this type of business, but look at the individual, look at somewhere like H2 Fitness, that's in Nottingham. Look at one of the big companies like Virgin or David Lloyd and what their aims, objectives, strategies might be. I also did a little check on YouTube and looked at some videos, and there were lots of videos just by typing in something as simple as personal training businesses. Okay, came up with all sorts. Now, here's a clear definition. Make sure it's about health and fitness. Okay, that's important. The final area I'd like you to look at and bear in mind is that revision guide. So it's really nice and clear, it's really set out well, but if you look at anything between page 68 to page 81, okay, I think you'll find quite a lot of information that will help you with the note taking process. Good luck, you'll be fine.